Hi, I'm Chris Reese, President and CEO of Sussex Rural Electric Cooperative. And today I'm going to answer some questions that you, the members, have submitted as part of the registration process for this year's annual meeting. First question is from Philip Shaming. What is the cooperative doing to increase the use of renewable energy, that is, getting away from all carbon emissions? Well, Mr. Shaming, it's funny that you asked that question because maybe you somehow saw our June Currents newsletter. If you didn't yet, it breaks down, and I'll recap here, our power mix. And I think you'll be happy to hear that we're doing well on the carbon emissions. Sussex Rural's power is 67% nuclear and hydro, which is water or a dam energy project. Sussex Rural has small ownership in both Susquehanna Nuclear Plant and the Raystown Dam, both located out in Pennsylvania. We also have another, let's say, 13% on the mix of our open market supply. You know, the 67% is ours. The 33% is purchased on the open market. And that's not all coal or natural gas. It's a mix. And again, if we take about 13% of that, based on 2020 purchases, that really takes us to almost 80% carbon-free power for our members. The New Jersey Energy Master Plan has a goal of 100% renewable or carbon-free power by the year 2050. They're currently at 27%. So again, Sussex Rural's at 80%, state's at 27%. Everybody's trying to get to this 100%. It's a very admirable goal, but at what cost for members or for ratepayers in New Jersey? The carbon-free versus renewable, it sometimes gets used interchangeably. They are the same in that they're not emitting emissions into the atmosphere. It's just nuclear is part of the mix, and you say it's carbon-free versus renewable, which is typically solar or wind. Sussex Rural is not regulated by the BPU. We're controlled by our members through an elected board of directors. So as the state comes out with some perhaps taxes or costs to pay for the solar and wind that is going to be coming in to the state, I don't think and hope not that the Sussex Rural members will be subjected to those. We can focus on our own power supply. Again, we're already at 80%, and we can get the best of both worlds. Carbon-free and one of the lowest rates in the state. I think just a couple municipals are lower residential electric rates than us. All the investor-owns have higher rates than Sussex Rural members. So that means your board and your management is making good choices. So over time, I anticipate our mix of carbon-free power to increase. That 80% will probably go up over the years as more options purchasing on the open market drop out, like coal and natural gas. But we'll certainly be managing that and watching it very carefully. Our next question comes from Christy Wyman. It seems that last year we had more outages than usual. Is our association with JCP&L the reason? The short answer to that is no, that is not the reason. However, it's a big however, they were the reason for one particularly large outage this past February. I'll recap kind of both aspects of that question. Sussex Rural has two connections to the grid. We receive our power through a connection, which we call delivery points with JCP&L. We have two of them, one in the Sussex area and one in the Vernon area. We can feed our entire system with only one of them, but we do have two for redundancy and backup. That's been that way for decades. That hasn't changed. I mean, we're talking, I think, the 1960s or 1970s. Jersey Central, on their transmission line, does have redundancy and backups. And what happened in February was kind of a worst case scenario where their redundant feeds and their backup feeds all failed at different times for various reasons. With no delivery points to us, all 12,000 or so of our members were out of power. And really, that was the first time that's ever happened where our lines were intact and fine, and we had no power coming to them. After that happened and things were restored, we did end up having, some meetings with JCP&L engineers to kind of go over that scenario and what happened. Um, we don't necessarily see all the behind the scenes stuff that they're doing, but certainly now have a great understanding of how many remote possibilities had to happen for that to go as bad as it did in February. And it's probably very unlikely that that would happen again. In all, I think we went back and looked at the last 10 years, their redundant feeds were ever truly without power for a total of 3 minutes over the past 10 years. So again, the percentages are very, very low. We've done a couple things to shore that up even so that that percentage, that 0.001%, gets closer to zero. So that explains the one time JCP&L did act as the reason for our outage, but typically they are not. I do want to address, though, outages have increased in both duration and the number of outages over the past, let's say, 3 years. We're aware of it. We're responding to this, and we're taking more steps to reduce that number. It is an absolute top goal of ours. What do we do to do that? Well, we're maintaining the right-of-ways, which is basically tree trimming, and maintaining the specs of those right-of-ways extremely cautiously. I'd say over past years, we could be a little more lenient, but we're really not allowing any leniency right now and cutting trees exactly to the specs that we need for maintaining our right-of-ways. I know cutting trees sometimes angers some people, but I think the outages anger more people and sometimes the same people. So we're kind of trying to choose the lesser of two evils by, maintaining our active tree trimming. Our tree trimming cycle, we cut all trees on our 700 plus miles of line every 4 years. But what we are doing is analyzing the growing cycles, and we even looked at cutting trees faster, maybe on a 3-year cycle. It's the same cost that you would have spread over 4 years. Now it would be condensed to a 3-year cycle. The problem with that is, of course, it's the amount of cash that you got to spend to do that. And to raise that cash would cause some rate increase. And we're avoiding that at the moment. We're trying to keep that level. So staying within that 4-year cycle, what we're doing is looking at analysis to perhaps maybe some areas do need 3 years, but some areas could be extended out 5 years. Also depends on rainy seasons and how that grows and all that. So we're trying to watch exactly how we can best manage our tree trimming budget. The other thing we're doing, not only trying to reduce outage, but we know outages are going to happen. We want to respond faster. So we're using technology back in our office to pinpoint locations. We can send our crews right to the location rather than just telling them a general area where a device opened and we have an outage and they've got to patrol and sometimes drive miles to find where either a broken pole was, or somebody hit a pole, or a tree came down. We can use some technology and analysis to do better locating of where crews need to go. So again, the restoration process will happen faster. We're not trying to rush our crews or make them work faster. They still got to do it safely and follow procedures and methodically get the lines back up. However, we can reduce restoration time. So those are the kinds of things we try to do to knock down the outage response time. The other thing we're battling is that we've seen weather the last few years, without a doubt, has trended more severe. We've had a lot more wind-driven events. The nor'easters in the winter have been pretty massive. We've had tropical storms. We had a named tropical storm, Isaias, this past August, and some other remnant storms come through, and then severe thunderstorms. And you can see these storms aren't just local to the Sussex Rural Territory as well. This is happening throughout New Jersey and the Northeast. You'll see, when we're battling a large outage situation, if you look around at neighboring utilities in the state or Pennsylvania and New York as well, they're all facing it. It's I don't want to say it's not just us, but it's not just us. The other problem with all this is that the trees in this area, it's obviously a beautiful area where we are, but there are a lot of trees, and trees don't get smaller. They don't shrink. They're getting taller, thicker, and actually, as they get older, weaker. And the other problem that we have is there's now pests that affect these trees that weren't even in existence 10 years ago. You have the ash borer taking out ash trees throughout the Northeast, literally all of them. Another one is called the spotted lanternfly. It's affecting trees. And again, if you look at, say, old pictures from the 1970s of, say, a lake community like Highland Lakes, and look at the trees there, those same trees are still there now, just a lot bigger and a lot taller, and again, older. So it's a bad recipe for outages. So we're trying to reverse that trend. We're committed to it, and it's going to be an ongoing battle. Thank you for that question. The next question, somewhat similar but a little different, is from Leighton Bergman. And he says, is JCP&L using our lines? And if so, why? Again, a quick answer to that is no, they are not. We have no sharing of any lines or equipment throughout our network and our grid. There is one small exception to that. We have well over 10,000 poles on our system. There's one pole that I know of that is, we call it a shared pole, where both JCP&L and Sussex Rural have primary lines kind of intersecting on that pole, going two different directions. There's been no problems on that pole that I know of over the years. It's not a new pole either. It's been that way a long time. But aside from that, we have two completely separate systems and do not share anything like that. About the only other thing we have are some areas where their line might cross higher over ours, again, going kind of in two different directions. That has caused a problem once or twice in the past. I know during Hurricane Sandy, their transmission line came down into one of our lines. It caused a pretty large outage, among others, during Sandy. And it took a little while because we had to wait for them to safely remove their wires before we could get to our work. Your question kind of allows me to reference a great video that's on our website on sussexrec.com. If you find the video library, there's one among a few others called How Power Gets to You. It's a quick 3-minute video. It really lays out how we are connected to the grid. This actually kind of helps answer the previous question as well. And, I think that'll give you a nice breakdown of how there are multiple systems in the area, but we're not sharing anything. So it's funny, since that February outage that I described in the second question, we get more questions about our kind of affiliation, our connection to JCP&L. The connections we've had, those two delivery points that I referenced, have always been there. That's been our way to get power to you for years. Again, I think those go back to the 1960s or 70s when they were connected. And realistically, we've never generated our own power here. So in one way or another, we've been connected to the grid through others since we came into existence in the 1930s. Their reliability doesn't typically affect us either, again, through redundancy and backups. We had this one incident that I hope is just a one-off situation back in February. And, so there's nothing new with JCP&L. It's just perhaps a lot more members raised awareness. And I just wanted to emphasize that point. My last question actually came from at least two members. So I don't have any names, but the question is, do you plan to implement time of use billing for electric vehicle charging? I got this question from the audience the last time we had an in-person annual meeting. That was in 2019. And the answer I gave at that meeting, unfortunately, is the exact same answer I'm giving now, 2 years later. Those rates are coming. The electric vehicle charging at home through Sussex Rural Electric, it's coming. It's just not out. We don't have it ready yet. We spent a lot of 2019 doing research, working through the hope to have a rate unveiling or a rate available to members beginning of 2020. And as pretty much all of you know, 2020 went a different way. The pandemic hit us early March. We shut down March 18th, 2020, and everything was disrupted for the rest of the year. I mean, everything. We basically lost a year of development in that regard. And we're just now starting to come out of things as I record this, and I'm hoping that we're right where we are in terms of developing that rate as we were in 2019. The things we have gained, though, is that we've gained another year of data and analysis on EV penetration. I know it's not a high penetration of electric vehicles in the Sussex territory, in the Sussex Rural Territory just yet. Anecdotally, if I'm driving around here in our neighborhoods, I occasionally see an electric vehicle on the road. I'm always looking. I don't see hardly any public chargers that I am aware of just yet in our area. However, if you go to Morris County, Bergen County, driving the roads down there, you do see a higher penetration. You see a lot more electric vehicles out there. Even see some chargers at the malls and things like that. So it's coming, similar to like the way cell phones, if any of you recall, how they were slow to come out to Sussex County where you had better coverage in other areas. It's coming. So we do have some time, but we want to be there for the members. I'm not anticipating a very dense public charging network or even a need for it in Sussex County. So I think there's going to be a lot of reliance on charging from home. That's where I think our members are going to be utilizing their electric vehicle charging so that they can do their 200, 250 miles or whatever you get on a range of a vehicle during the day, come home, plug in, and charge overnight. The goal we have is to make it economical, so that hopefully we can manage overnight charging to be at a much cheaper rate, making it a benefit to Sussex Rural members to have EVs and to push them. We're in the business of selling electricity, so the more people that buy vehicles that don't use gasoline and use electricity is good for the co-op. And again, good for the environment and all the other pluses that go for it, and hopefully good for the consumer that is either getting a cheaper or more reliable car and not having any emissions that go along with it. So, we're on it. There's plans to even purchase our own electric vehicles that we were planning to do last year and haven't done yet. I personally want to get an electric vehicle. I haven't done that yet, but again, that's all coming. There's some obstacles, and what we're working on is how to meter this. Do we just do a whole house time of use billing or a whole house on peak, off peak type rate, or can we just sub-meter the charger and just apply that rate to the charger? Then it's a matter of how do we get that data? How do we get that sub-meter information? Do we get two-way data transfer? Because some systems are looking at that, and then we can kind of manage the schedule of not all the chargers coming on at 11 o'clock at night. We can balance that load a little better. And there's different ways to do that. So those are all the things that go into this analysis. And then, of course, what that rate should be as well. We want to do this in a way once and do it the right way. So again, we are working on it. It sounds like the end of this year, we should have some better information on a schedule, perhaps very late in the year or early in 2022. I'm sorry, I'm not more specific than that, but it's absolutely something that's on our radar and something we're watching for. Those are our questions. I appreciate getting all of them. I miss doing this live, although it's sometimes you're a little more under the gun that way, but I'm happy to answer that. If you ever do have more questions, we have an email address called contacttheceo@sussexrec.com. That's right on our website. You could always email that. That's a monitored email address, and you very well could get a response from me specifically addressing any question. You can always call the office, and I wish you all well. Thank you.